doors were open for me. And I think that I had an obligation to open doors for other people.
She was really proud. I mean, she had a lot to do with that promotion. You know, when I got promoted to Monday through Friday.
Anne was Queen Mother of that village in Ghana.
Yes.
She cared for that village, and they sought her out.
Trailblazer, mentor, servant, NBC4 presents Remembering Anne B. Walker. Here's Carrie Charles.
I, like so many of you, am grateful to have crossed paths with Anne B. Walker. This next hour will be a walk through decades of a life well lived. Walker passed away Sunday, October 5th, 2025, just weeks shy of her 102nd birthday.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you.
Mrs. Walker was a cheerleader of mine. Her work decades ago, particularly at this station, cleared the way for minorities and women to work in local newsrooms. In July, I visited her home to present the Board of Governors Award on behalf of the Ohio Valley Emmys.
I say it's long overdue, but it's right on time.
I don't know that it's long overdue, because I think that things come in due time. I really do. The experiences that I had were available to anyone who was working at that time. It's just that I was willing to put in the extra. And I mean, it was an extra. For instance, when Maury Butler said to me, "Well, Anne, I want you to do the Sunday show." I said, "What's Sunday show?" And he said, "Well, the one we do on Sunday that I've been hosting, but you will now host it."
This photo, dated September 1970, shows Anne B. Walker with interns at WLWC-TV, now known as WCMH, NBC4. Walker started and led the internship program as a way to introduce minorities to the field of broadcasting. She spent decades at this station. Her role as the station's assistant community services director made her the first woman in broadcast management in the city. On air, she took over a program called Focus on Columbus. Prior to TV, the 2020 Columbus Hall of Fame inductee worked as an editor and columnist for the old Ohio Sentinel. Walker was the first woman and African American to cover Columbus City Hall and first woman broadcaster to report on the Ohio legislature, an assignment that led to tough questioning of then candidate Jimmy Carter, led up President Carter to call on Walker.
I met with this young man who had been appointed the head of all the news staff, you know, and they wanted a person to do the PR for the Poor People's Campaign, Poor People's Organization, because what we were going to do was to talk to as many individual groups as possible. And apparently somebody said, "Well, Anne Walker can do that."
And she did, serving as a special assistant to the director of the White House Public Affairs Office for the Carter administration.
So what's going on here?
A news conference.
Okay.
You see Jimmy sitting right here. Where's Anne Walker sitting?
Right next to him.
Right next to Jimmy.
Walker, a Columbus native, graduated from East High School in 1940. School yearbooks show her student council and home economics club photos. Another one with the girls' tennis team touted her athleticism. The caption suggests she even made a name for herself back then, winning the Intermediate District Championship in 1937. And as the story goes, a school counselor encouraged her to focus on domestic service work after high school. Well, instead, she went to Prairie View A&M University in Texas on athletic and academic scholarships. On Inauguration Day 2021, I got a sense of how she developed her grit.
What motivated you to push towards success?
Carrie, I was the only girl with 5 brothers. My mother died when I was quite young, so my father raised us. And as in any minority, in the teaching and the training, the minority goes with the majority. So I was taught as the boys were taught, to look a man in the eye, to have a firm handshake, to be more concerned with being right than what somebody thinks of you.
Walker ultimately earned her bachelor's degree from George Williams College in Chicago in 1944, where she also began a career in social work. Years later, she freelanced for major black newspapers of the time, like the Chicago Defender and the Philadelphia Tribune. She also published the Scorpion magazine right here in Columbus. NBC4's Delaney Ruth joins me now because in 2023, Mrs. Walker celebrated a milestone birthday. Delaney had an interview with her. It's pretty memorable, so what stands out most?
Yeah, I mean, she gave me so much time to sit down and chat with her on her 100th birthday at her party. So it was a great time. I had the opportunity to interview her 2 years ago at COSI. She told me when Martin Luther King Jr. came to Columbus, he asked to be interviewed by a black journalist, and she was tapped for the job. Walker was the first woman in Columbus broadcast news management, and she told me how the news director back then hired her.
He said, Ann, I need to have you sit on camera with me. And I said, and do what? He said, well, co-host the show. And I said, okay. Well, I was good. I was good, and it was happening. I can't remember now, but I remember that it was a topic that I was extremely familiar with. And I just took the ball and ran with it. So we did that for 2 Sundays. And then on the 3rd Sunday, he told me I had to do the show by myself. I said, why? He said, you can do it. I said, that's not the point. I said, what's happening? And he said, well, I just think you're good enough to do it by yourself. And he said, this is what I really wanted to do, was to move you into a host position. So I said, well, let's just call it something else. So we renamed it Focus on Columbus, you know, because we were focusing on the issues in the Columbus community.
Being a trailblazer for women, for people of color, when you turn on the TV now and you see so many diverse faces, what do you think about that?
Hooray! You know, I started well, I wanted to get more women in the business. I wanted to get more blacks in the business.
You're looking back on 100 years. What are you most proud of about your life?
I'm proud of the number of people I moved into the business. You know, I don't have a degree in journalism. Doors were open for me. And I think that I had an obligation to open doors for other people. Because I think it's important. That's how we pay back. And I think it's imperative. It really is. It's imperative that we pay back. You know? So even though I sound flip when I talk about the glass ceiling, I'm serious. If you have to crush it, if you have to shatter it, if you have to push it to help somebody get through, do it.
It's pretty interesting to hear from her. I mean, that must have been a great experience.
It was. I mean, she sat down with us during her 100th birthday party. Her daughter was trying to get her to come and do the festivities, and Ms. Walker was saying to me, no, just take as long as you want. You want to ask all the questions you need. So it was a great time. And I was also able, during that time, to look through a lot of the pictures from when she was here at NBC4. And it's just, she's very memorable and a historic figure here in Columbus. And it's an honor to be able to be part of this and part of her celebration.
I was at that birthday party, and I remember looking over and seeing you, and I thought, Delaney's still interviewing her?
She told me to keep going. She's like, I want you to ask all your questions.
Yeah.
So it was amazing, yeah.
Thanks for sharing some of those memories. Delaney, thank you so much. Up next, the place where Miss Ann Boston became Mrs. Linwood Walker, church.
She saw herself as an everyday person who had a will to fight for everyday people.
When this picture was taken in September of 1946, it made news. The society section of the Ohio State News declared, Miss Ann Boston and Linwood Walker marry. The couple went on to have 4 children. You see the family here in this photo. Mom, sons Keith and Philip, daughters Amelia and Julia Lynn, and Dad. She attended East High School, graduating in 1940. To her right is her twin brother, George. Linwood Walker went to school across town at the old North High, where he was on the track team. A September 13, 1947 article in the paper shares more of his memorable story. It centered on a reception his parents held to honor their son. The article reads, "After graduating from North High School, Linwood Walker entered Ohio State in 1941, enlisted in the Marines of April 1943, and while serving overseas was wounded in action on August 4, 1944, resulting in blindness. After being honorably discharged, he returned home and re-entered Ohio State in the fall of 1945. Despite his blindness, he graduated from the College of Commerce in June 1947. Just days after the reception, Linwood Walker left to enroll at Atlanta University's School of Social Work, pursuing a master's degree in counseling. Over the years, Linwood Walker accomplished a number of great things. He worked at the Ohio Penitentiary, served on the boards of the Disabled American Veterans, the Americans Council for the Blind, the Ohio State Library, and CAT Co-Arts. He was also an integral part of Ann B. Walker and Associates Travel and Tourism, ensuring that the needs of people with disabilities were included in every travel plan. Linwood Walker founded the Negro History Club and helped establish the Central Ohio Radio Reading Service. His family says he even won a bronze medal in Special Olympics downhill skiing. The Walkers regularly hosted events in their home. Friends like Coretta Scott King would perform during Jazz with the Walkers. Monies raised supported organizations like the United Negro College Fund. The couple met when Miss Boston, who was working in Chicago, stopped in Columbus during a work trip. She was asked to read to a blind World War II veteran, Walker. At one point, he surprised her with a basket of strawberries. Inside, an engagement ring. Linwood Walker, born June 6, 1923, died February 9, 1996. He was 72 years old.
Mr. Walker's family says he never used a service dog. However, in his later years, he used a cane when traveling on foot, by bus, or while spending time with family and friends. The couple's wedding was held at Bethany Presbyterian Church, where Mrs. Walker served as a ruling elder.
A life well lived, and she lived it according to her faith. And I don't mean that in a religious way. I mean that in terms of what she felt needed to happen in the church and within the Black community if we were going to make progress, if there was going to be equity, if there was going to be equality, if there was going to be racial justice. But with Ann, age was nothing but a number. As long as she was strong in mind, strong in will, she was going to push for what she envisioned the future for herself, her church, and the community should be. I think we get caught up in this legendary figures and create these icons. What Anne was always a person that wanted to be reached. She never saw herself that way. We will miss that presence.
Yeah, but as long as we keep speaking her name, she's with us.
She's still alive, my brother.
The day after Walker joined the Ancestors, I gathered a group of people to share memories about the woman they called friend, mentor, Queen Mother.
I learned so much from her. She took me under her wing, and she allowed me to grow. She kind of nurtured me right here in this building.
The first part of our conversation when we come back.
Ann B. Walker was very active in the Central Ohio community. I asked some dear friends to share memories of the woman they loved so much. Our conversation began with retired anchor Angela Pace, who said Walker was her mentor from her senior year in college and beyond.
I was a senior at Capital University, and I had an opportunity to intern here. And Ann Walker was director of community affairs or community services back then, and so she was my supervisor. I was so intimidated because growing up here in Columbus, I knew who Ann B. Walker was. I had heard her on the radio. I had read her column in the Columbus Sentinel, and I was terrified. But I learned so much from her. She took me under her wing, and she allowed me to grow. She kind of nurtured me right here in this building. And I tell people all the time that she saw something in me that I didn't know was there, something I did not see. And she was not going to let me lose or abuse it. She was tough on me, let me tell you. She was tough. But that toughness was tempered with love and concern. And I have so many Ann B. Walker stories, and we don't have time for all of them here. But she was the reason that I got into this business and that I was able to stay in this business in my hometown for decades.
Talk about using your platform to change the lives of other people. I talk about that all the time, but I think it's so generational in that I grew up watching anchors do that. You grew up watching her do that.
There weren't a lot of people who looked like you and me on TV back then, so Ann Walker was a unicorn, I guess you could say. And one of the most important things I learned from Ann was my responsibility as a Black woman with a platform to reach out and to tell the stories of all communities, to make sure that all stories, the good stories, were being told. She had such a connection to this community because she, like me, was born and raised here. So she felt a duty, a responsibility to make sure that those stories were being told, to make sure that those voices were heard. And I wanted to be Ann Walker when I grew up. That's what I tried to do. I tried to emulate what she was doing.
Incredible, incredible. I saw out of the corner of my eye you shaking your head in agreement. Tell me about what was going through your mind as you heard that.
Ann succeeded me as moderator of Presbyterian women in the Presbytery of Scioto Valley. And during the course of her term as moderator, and then after that, I got to know her. She came to my home, we had dinner together. Our daughter asked her lots of questions, and through the years after that, we just visited back and forth, and I asked her for her history, and she was never bashful about telling me how hard it was growing up Black. And that meant a lot to me to hear it from her, to understand, to try to walk where she had walked in my own mind, because my upbringing had been so different. I didn't grow up here. I didn't see 71 go through and destroy her home. And I also wasn't a member of the Black church, Bethany Presbyterian. I was, as we learned just in recent years at Broad Street Presbyterian, my church, the Black members had been treated like second-class citizens and had left the church to form their own church. And I knew as I worked on the racial justice initiative at Broad Street that one of the things we had to do was make reparation to Bethany, and Ann encouraged us in that. And I'm so pleased to say our session finally sent a letter of apology, and Bethany received it, and that matters a great deal.
She learned about that taking place. What did it mean to her?
She was grateful, very grateful that it had happened in her lifetime.
I think it's incredible to hear you talk about some of your upbringing being so different, and then looking at this woman behind us who just represents so much of what the best that this country can be. And we were talking about that a bit earlier, how she's such a role model for not just Black folks, not just women, but just people in general.
Exactly. We all strive to be like Ann, strong. As women, we too were second-class citizens, And it took me a long time, and some of it I learned from Ann, was to stand up. But I learned it really through Presbyterian women, and she was part of that.
Alpha Kappa Alpha and Ann B. Walker. What's that story?
Yes. I knew her the last 16 years of her life because I transferred from my chapter in South Carolina to the chapter here when I moved here. And my first memory of her was her coming into the meeting with this beautiful African attire. I had to meet the person behind that attire. I never thought I would be a chapter president like she was. And so I just had to go up and talk to her. And the thing about her, she was larger than life without having a big head. I love that. She was an important person that led by her presence rather than just by, you should know who I am. This is what I've done and all of that. And so she was the 24th president of our chapter. Later on down the road, I wound up being the 33rd president. And every president after her that I know of, she supported us. She came out when we did things. She came out when she sponsored things, which made other people younger than she was feel bad if they weren't there. As a matter of fact, she came to chapter meetings up until a year ago. She was there, and she would be there. She might have been eating her food or just sitting silently, but she was there to hear. She was there to make a difference and to make sure that we were doing the same thing. Not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. And I really respected her for that. She had the best smile. And I love that about her, and being a part of a special celebration that we did for her 100th birthday, right before our chapter meeting, I was able to spearhead that. And I'll never forget her saying, "Charlene, how did you pull this over on me? How did you pull this over on me?" And I said, "Well, we wanted to surprise you, and your family wanted to surprise you." She said, "Well, you did it, and I'm so grateful." And it was just beautiful. It was remarkable. And I know she's just short of her 102nd birthday, which would have been November 1st. But her life and legacy and footprint will always run through Alpha Sigma Omega chapter, but also will always run through Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, as she was on the International Publicity Committee. And so her footprint long and wide, but she led by her leadership stride. And so we were blessed to know her.
Talk about this, how she continued to be active in the community later in life. I remember she would have been 99 at the time, and I was at Juneteenth, and I ran into her daughter, and I said, "Oh, how's your mother? Is she such and such?" And she's down the street volunteering. She was she was everywhere.
She was, and encouraging us to do the same thing. Whether it was assisting her with feeding people at Bethany Presbyterian on Saturdays, whether it was something going on in the community that she would send out so everybody would know about it, she was constantly leading by example. It didn't matter if she didn't feel well. It didn't matter that she was aging. She wanted to make sure that we lived up to the ideals of what we took those vows for. And she was a shining example of that.
For sure, for sure. Welcome back to Remembering Ann B. Walker. When we left you, we were hearing from dear friends about this trailblazer, an agent of change. We'll pick up where we left off.
Something that I really want people to remember is that Ann was Queen Mother of that village in Ghana.
Yes.
And she wore that role so well. She cared for that village, and they sought her out. I never really found out, I don't really recall how they chose her, but she always felt it was God directing them to call on her. And she cared for that village so much. She brought so much to it. And she was truly, not only in Ghana, but here in Columbus, a Queen Mother. And she wore that role, that title proudly and so well.
The village that you're talking about, she adopted when she was president, actually, of Alpha Kappa Alpha at that time of our sorority chapter. And She would take supplies even after she was out of office. Whatever they needed, she would gather up supplies here, take it back whenever there were trips that she went on. If she took some of our sisters with her, everybody had to take so many supplies to go back, and she just kept caring for that village and kept caring for that village, and that led to her being crowned the Queen Mother, and she was that. And she was a queen everywhere she went without being overbearing with the crown. She was just that by character. So that's a part of how all of that happened with the supplies back and forth, and then allowing people who visited from Africa to stay in her home when they came, or find a home where they could stay if she couldn't house everybody.
Taking it back, when I came into Columbus, I'm a Ghanaian, so when I came into Columbus, I was trying to find out, I want to get associated with people who knew about Ghana. And many people don't know much about Ghana. But when I met Anne, she knew more than I about my own country. Even her dressing and everything. If you see Anne with all the bangles on her hand, she knows every one of them, where it was bought, what it means, its significance. And so that got me, in a way, attracted to her in a special way. She's an angel. I come from a family with 8 aunts. And so back home, everyone is an aunt. Every woman is an aunt to me. And so Anne became a special aunt to me in so many ways. And she's always pushing you to reach higher level. I'm also a Presbyterian, and so Anne would go with my wife to conferences. I met Anne in her 80s. And let me tell you a little story about Anne, which you all appreciate. There was a day they were going to go somewhere, and that was the first time my wife was going to join Anne. And I told my wife, she's an elderly woman, so make sure you drive her slowly to, I think it was Kentucky. And lo and behold, when I took them down, dropped my wife over there, my wife came back and said, Anne says she's going to drive. Do you think she can drive? And I said, I don't really know much about her, but it's her car that you're going to drive, so let's pray and hope she drives you safely. And this is a story my wife should be here to tell you, because she drove her safely, and on the way I said, how many times do you want us to stop? It's because she doesn't stop on the way. She drove all the 3 or so hours, and this is Anne. Throughout her life that I have associated with her, I always tell her she's so blessed and she impacts life to the very highest. And when she was that was in 2015, she was in her 90s. We were holding a Ghana Mission Network conference in Columbus. I was the one hosting it. And so I said, why don't I invite Anne to be our guest speaker? At the same time, I was thinking about her age and everything. And immediately I would say, yes, certainly I'm going to be there. And on that day, I made all the arrangement for her to come. She came down ready, and I said, oh, I would want to give you a seat to sit on so that you can. She said, no. She stood on her feet, and for that 30 minutes, everyone was applauding, because every word that came from her mouth was genuine. And I can say so much about Anne. Thanksgiving, every Thanksgiving, she would invite us. And she would do all the cooking. She does a lot of cooking through into her 90s. And the one that really impressed me is the soup kitchen. So I ended up going to help there on Saturdays. Every Saturday, Anne will be there serving and making sure everyone gets to eat before she would eat even at the end. Anne has been what they call Nkoswahini. Nkoswa means a development chief. So the little village in Ghana where she's a chief, every time she was communicating with them. In fact, I believe she used to go to Ghana almost every year. And so she knows so much about Ghana, so much, the presidents and all that has been happening there. And so she also encouraged me to be more impactful in my own country as well as in my community. And so here in Columbus, we hold what we call the Ghana Pick Ohio. It's an annual event which we hold every year. She was the one who actually encouraged me to be part of it, and we've been doing this for the past 20 years. If we have to talk about Anne, she is just an angel for us in the Ghanaian community. Everywhere that you meet Anne, she comes up with a smiling face. Just about 2 weeks ago, when we heard she was in the hospital at OSU, we went to visit her. Immediately when we got there, she called me and said, Archie, you're wearing a beautiful dress. So I decided to put on that same dress today. And I couldn't imagine someone who had tubes and all of that would recognize me and have so much of a smile that we felt so grateful being in her presence. That was Anne.
So you had the challenge of taking all these folks' stories and other folks' stories and creating a piece to tell the story of Ann B. Walker.
Yes.
Why did you sign up for that project?
It allowed me to give back to her. When I came to Central Ohio, because I'm not from here, via Pittsburgh, Boulder, Colorado in the early days, you know, back in the early 80s when there was only like 3 of us.
Now it was like 4.
So, you know, I didn't know anyone, but she reached out to me when I was at VKO and welcomed me and embraced me, and then we got together and she showed me the ropes. So from that beginning, we just had that opportunity to continue to express ourselves as friends and coming together. So it was an opportunity for me to give back to her because of her legacy, because of the accomplishments that she did and that she had in this community and the impact that she had on this community.
What's the thing that you all are going to want people to remember about your friend?
I want people to remember that she was a bridge.
What does that
She
mean?
used her influence and whatever she had to bless other people. When she originally she thought she was going to Africa one time because her daughter was studying there. She and her husband went. They thought it would be a one-time trip. They fell in love with the land and all of that. But there was a time that Alpha Kappa Alpha was doing something called Africare in Africa, helping, especially with South Africa, helping people to get things that they needed, supplies, all of that. And she used the influence of Alpha Kappa Alpha with Africare, and she had our chapter to adopt a village there. We developed a cookbook, put that together, and the proceeds from that went to purchase a well in Ghana, went to dig a well so that people would have fresh water. She used that, okay, I've got Alpha Kappa Alpha over here. How can I use the influence that I have over here to help these people here? Later on, she was involved in the establishment of a library and a clinic there as well. She did some work there, but she used, okay, I have this in my hand. I'm going to bridge it here so that I can continue to help people. And I want people to remember that she was not only a living legacy, but that the legacy lives on. The things that she bridged in life, she's reminding us, whatever you have in your hand, take that and use it as a bridge to help make somebody else's life better. And that's what I want people to remember about my wonderful sorority sister, Mrs. Ann Boston Walker.
Awesome, awesome. What else? What comes to mind?
Just her community connection, the way she reached out and made sure everybody was on top of things, the way she handled her business in the community. I mean, she was a living legacy, you know, for all those years. I'd never had the opportunity to see her in action while on the air or anything like that, but the stories that I heard, you know, that was backed up by her actions, her beauty. She was just a wonderful person.
I learned so much from her about my responsibilities as a Black woman and a journalist. I couldn't just skate on the surface. I had to make sure that everybody's voice was being told, and that was something that I learned from Ann. This was her hometown. She believed in it. She loved it. She loved the people in it, and I thought, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. That's what all of us are supposed to do. So that same love that she was showering on your village is something that she began doing right here in Columbus.
Village,
in her own village.
And it all grew out of her deep faith.
Yeah,
it did.
The final portion of our conversation with friends is just ahead. But first, the former Channel 4 news anchor who made history while at this very station shares the story of the angel at the curbside who urged him to call Columbus.
Who is Ann Walker? What does she mean to you?
Well, I knew of Ann Walker before I ever got to Columbus and WLWC, which later became WCMH, Channel 4. I knew of her when I was in Toledo.
This is News Watch 4, the 11 o'clock report. Live from the News Center with Hugh DeMoss, Leon Bibb, Jerry Razor, Jimmy Crum, and the award-winning Channel 4 News team.
This is Leon Bibb, on air in 1976 at what is now NBC4. He first went on air at the station Valentine's Day 1972. And this is one of his station publicity photos and even original paperwork gathering information to announce his arrival to Channel 4. It's dated January 26, 1972. Just 3 weeks before he started here, Leon Bibb was a fresh-faced reporter in Northwest Ohio. On a cold January day, he picked up a University of Toledo student hitchhiking on the side of the road, gave him a ride. That encounter led to a phone call with a woman who had already conquered print and radio in Columbus. Their call would change his career. First came Columbus, then it was on to his hometown of Cleveland, where he's been covering major stories for 46 years and counting.
He looked at my profile, recognized me. He said, I was brand new in Toledo as a reporter. Brand new. I'd only been there for about 8 or 9 months at that particular time. He saw the camera in the back seat and he says, you're the new guy here in Toledo on WTOL. And I said, that's true. I'm the new guy. And he immediately said, this is all in first 15 seconds. He immediately said, my girlfriend's mother wondered, whatever happened to you? Wow. And I said, who's your girlfriend's mother? And he said, she's the public affairs director for the NBC station in Columbus. And she saw tape of you, and she's talked about you. She talked to me about you, he said. She talked to a lot of people about you and wondered where you were. He said, why don't you call her? That night I called Ann Walker. And she said, as soon as I told her who I was, she said, I know you, Leon Bibb. I know of you. She said, are you looking for a job? I said, I got a job. Are you under contract? I'm not under contract. She says, well, funny you should call. There's a job opening, and I'd love for you to apply for it. And I said that I would. And she told me she said, call the news director. And she gave me his name. She said, but don't call him for 30 minutes. I want to call him and tell him about you. So I waited 30 minutes. I called the news director, who was Hugh DeMoss. He was also the anchor man at WLWC, Channel 4 there in Columbus. And he said, Ann told me about you. And we set up an interview. He and I set up an interview over the telephone. And a week later, I was in Columbus. And I took a Greyhound bus, and I walked in, and he talked about hiring me. And 2 weeks after that, 3 weeks from the day of the hitchhiker, I went on the air in Columbus. I went down there to be a reporter. And in that 2-week period, he says, a strange thing happened. We decided we would want you to anchor the 11 o'clock news on Saturdays and Sundays and be a featured reporter the rest of the week. Ann Walker was the first person I talked to. She set everything up. I've told this story from church pulpits many times, and I call the story "Angel at the Curbside" because I think that guy was an angel, and I think Ann Walker was also an angel.
And you made history here in Columbus.
Well, it was a different time.
Leon Bibb joined Channel 4 in 1972. In 1976, he earned a promotion, weekday evening co-anchor. That move, the first for a black journalist in the state of Ohio. Do you remember Mrs. Walker finding out that you had received this promotion?
Well, she was really proud. I mean, she had a lot to do with that promotion. But Columbus set the stage for me. And Ann Walker set the stage for me to even just begin in Columbus, just to get into Columbus.
Yeah.
It was a different time. I mean, people said, you were charting new ground, and that began to open up the door for other African American, other black news anchors there in Columbus.
In 1979, Bibb left Columbus for his hometown of Cleveland, where he's been on television ever since.
And when I retired, although I'm still working in television news, I'm working part-time now after more than 40 years here in Cleveland. But when I retired, I called Ann Walker to let her know that I was stepping down. We'd been in touch with each other over the years here and there, but I let her know that I was stepping down from full time work to more part time work. And I thanked her because she had everything to do with my getting to Columbus. And from Columbus, my career skyrocketed. I went on the air as an anchor in 1972, and I've been on the air ever since as an anchor. Everything really started in Columbus.
Up next, final reflections on a servant who wanted to give back even when she couldn't get out of bed.
And she even said to me, as you are out and you are involved, if there's something that I can do, let me know.
It really troubled her to not be in the kitchen at Bethany.
We mentioned Ann Walker played tennis in high school and college. A member of the American Tennis Association, her family says she once lost a winning match to tennis legend Althea Gibson.
I have to tell you a quick story. Ann, when I was interning with Ann had a show, a community affairs show. And she came to me one day and said, I'm going to let you do one of the interview segments in my show. And I'm like, whoa, okay, it's about time, you know. And so I was supposed to interview the head of some nonprofit agency about some upcoming event, and gave me the material and said, this is what you need to study, this is what you need to know. And I'm, yeah. I was more concerned about how cute I was going to be on TV, right? So the next day, I sit down and I do this interview with this executive director. And at the end of it, I'm waiting for Ann to tell me how outstanding I was. She called me up to her office and she said, I can't tell you how disappointed I am. She said, you did an okay job, but it would have been so much better if you had actually read the material that I gave you, if you had actually prepared. It wasn't about you, Angela. It was about this agency and what this agency is doing to help the people of Columbus. She said, don't you ever, ever go into an interview without being prepared. Guess what? I never, ever went into an interview without, I always thought about Ann whenever I had a big interview to do. I went to the bathroom after that and I cried. Not just because I had let myself down, but I had let Ann Walker down.
Yeah.
Ann believed in me and gave me an opportunity and I screwed it up. I never, ever wanted her to be disappointed in me again. What Ann did for me and for so many other young folks out there was, if she saw something in you, oh, she was going to let you know, I believe in you. And I know, I don't think, I know you can be the very best at what you do. And she would not let go of that, and she would not let you let go of that. Even when I didn't believe in myself, I'm like, Ann would not let me fail. And when she did that for me, I knew she had done that for how many others and was going to continue to do that. I stand on her shoulders, and they are broad, broad shoulders. And I am so glad that God put Ann Walker in my life.
I think about the first time I interviewed her, because y'all asked. The first time I interviewed her was on Zoom. And we had an exchange, and we just sat and talked, and then I interviewed her in person at her house. And the photographer left, and she closed the door, and she leaned back in her seat, and she said, all right, how are they treating you at the station? And she wanted to know, you know, she said, it seems like you were getting a warm reception. Is that the truth? And she wanted to know how I'm adjusting to being home. What was it like working in other markets and coming home? And I was just like, wow, who is this lady? You know, I keep hearing so much about her. And so the way she cared about me, I am so grateful. So grateful.
One thing I'll always remember, Carrie, is in this building here, just the way Ann was respected. Now, she was the only black in management here at Channel 4 at the time.
Only woman?
And no, there was another woman in
okay.
management, but Ann was the only black woman in management. And she carried herself, well, you all know, she carried herself with such, is regalness a word? Because it ought to be.
Yes.
With such regalness, just the way she walked into a room. And she was professional, she was good at what she did, and she did not let you forget it. You knew that if Ann Walker said did, you were going to do did. She was respected sometimes grudgingly, but she was respected because she earned respect and she demanded respect. And I thought, that's what I want to be. I want people to look at me and say, she's good at what she does, so I got to respect her, whether I want to or not. And so you look at that, and then you see the other side where she embraces you, and she lets you know that she cares about you and that she cares about where you're going and how you're fitting in your situation. She, years after she left, and I think she was working in the Carter administration at the time, and I was anchoring, I think, the noon or something here, and she called me one day. Now, she hadn't been at the station for years, but she called me one day. And one of my coworkers, Diane Burns, and I don't know if you remember Diane or not, but she was another sister here at Channel 4, and she was an anchor. Diane Burns got a job anchoring in Chicago. Ann called me and she said, so Diane Burns is going to Chicago. And I said, yeah, isn't that great? She said, why aren't you going to Chicago? She said, you are as good as, if not better than, why aren't you going to Chicago? And I thought, I cannot make this woman happy. I'm like, I just can't do anything to make her like me. But it was just that's that basically, that's what it is. Yeah. She was telling me, girl, you can do this. Stop holding yourself back. You can do this. And once I let all that kind of simmer and marinate, I thought, she cares about me. She's not criticizing me. She's telling me, you can be. So do it. I'll always remember that. She says that it wasn't like that. Years later, she said, I didn't say it like that. I said, and I was on the other end of the phone. I know.
And when she told you about the interview, she said, I was brushing your hair. And I said, no, you just, honey, next time, get it together. You're like, that is not what happened. I feel like I got cheated because I didn't get invited to Thanksgiving.
Wow. Wow, you missed out. Wow.
She was, it sounds like, not only great host, but great cook, and how food brings us all together and creates community.
If you were there at Ann's place on Thanksgiving, you would just be amazed at what he does. In fact, her dining room and the kitchen are pretty close by. And those days that we're going, he was still in a wheelchair, but she would take her time, and when we would call and ask, and we need to come down and help. They said, no, you come in as guests, so you have to come just to come and feel happy and eat, and we can chat. And she did everything, laid the table, and everything was so arranged that you feel as if you've gone to a restaurant or to a special place.
It was tough for her being bedridden. And one of our last conversations, she talked about wanting to be out in the community and helping. And she even said to me, as you are out and you are involved, if there's something that I can do, let me know.
It really troubled her to not be in the kitchen at Bethany on Saturdays and overseeing, making sure that Keith did it right and all the food got out and all the people got fed. That was, she wanted a meal on Saturday because all the food pantries and everything else were closed on the weekend. She wanted hungry people to get their food on Saturdays, on the weekend. And so I've worked in that kitchen too, as have some of my other friends from Broad Street. And that work will carry on, I am sure. It is part of the community and its work, and it will continue in Ann's name.
You know, Carrie, it's and you mentioned about how sharp she was and how she didn't forget anything. So a couple of months ago, Doris Calloway Moore, another Ann Walker fangirl, we went to visit Ann at her home, and I remember Julia Lynn, her daughter, saying, now you'll probably have to introduce yourself to her, tell you who she is, who you are, because she's tired and she sleeps a lot. And I remember coming around, and she was bedridden, and I remember coming around to the side of the bed, and I was going to say, hi, Ms. Walker, if you don't remember me. And she just looked at me, and I didn't even get the words out of my mouth. She said, Angela, and with attitude, too, with Angela. And I said, yes, ma'am. And then we had the best time just walking down memory lane and telling stories, and her yelling at me because I always tell the story of how she made me cry, and she says I made it up, and you know. But it was just, I'm so glad that I had that opportunity to go to visit with her and to see her, because you never know when your time is coming. But I'm just so thankful for that time, because here is a woman who made it possible for me to have the incredible career that I had, the incredible career that you're having. And again, I say I stand on her shoulders, and a lot of us do, and I'm just glad I got a chance to say thank you to her.
My last visit, it was during the summer, and it was hot. And Julia Lynn said, "Oh, we can have the fan on." And we were there. And she said, we can have the fan on for you. And I'm trying to be all polite. Yeah. No, don't worry about that. And I'm in the room, and I'm like, oh my goodness. I had sweat dripping everywhere, and I was like, I can't take my jacket off now. And now we end where we began, the Board of Governors Award from the Ohio Valley Emmys, and part of Walker's acceptance speech. And so a final word of gratitude from a woman who left this world better than she found it.
Thank you. Thank you. Because if it had not been for the support that I received, it would not be possible. And I know that. So I want to say thank you. The other thing is that I want to recognize that there were those who helped me who didn't know they were helping me.
Wow.
And you have people like that.
Yeah.
You know? And so I say thank you to them.
Thanks for watching. For more NBC4, download the NBC4 streaming app. You'll get free 24/7 local programming streamed straight to your living room. Just search NBC4 Columbus on your Apple TV, Amazon Fire, Roku, or Samsung device.